On January 25th, 2014, 16-year-old Makenzie Wethington's dream of skydiving turned into a nightmare. What was meant to be a thrilling birthday adventure quickly spiraled into a life-or-death struggle. Skydiving, for most, is the ultimate rush. The adrenaline of free-falling through the open sky, the feeling of freedom thousands of feet above the earth, and a view unlike any other. But skydiving also comes with its risks that demand flawless precision. A single malfunction, no matter how small, can turn a breathtaking experience into a deadly ordeal. For Makenzie, the dream of skydiving had been years in the making. With parental consent, she'd been eagerly awaiting the moment she could take the leap, and January 25th was supposed to be the day she lived out that dream. But during what should have been a routine jump, something went terribly wrong, sending her plummeting 3,000 feet toward the earth with no way to stop her fall. It started as a birthday wish. Makenzie had always wanted to skydive, and she was excited to learn that at 16, with parental consent, she could jump in Oklahoma. When she asked her father, Joe Wethington, to go with her, he was hesitant at first but agreed, making the 200-mile drive from Texas to Chickasha, Oklahoma, where they'd arranged their jump with Pegasus Air Sports Center. For Makenzie, this was the ultimate birthday gift. Makenzie's parents had some concerns, especially her mother, Holly, who had reservations about the jump. After hours of planning and paperwork, Joe and Makenzie arrived at the airfield, joining a training session that lasted several hours. It wasn't until the session was nearly over that Makenzie learned the jump would be solo instead of tandem, as she had originally hoped. A static line attached to the plane would automatically release her parachute, which meant that, while she would jump alone, the parachute should open without her having to pull it herself. Despite these last-minute changes, Makenzie's excitement outweighed her fear. She felt prepared, and with her father by her side, she stepped onto the plane, ready for the experience of a lifetime. Makenzie's heart raced with excitement as the small airplane climbed to the designated altitude. The door opened and her father, Joe, jumped first, landing safely. Now it was Makenzie's turn. With the static line securely attached to the plane, Makenzie stepped out into the open sky and took the leap. The parachute deployed as planned, but just seconds later, something went terribly wrong. Instead of descending smoothly, Makenzie's parachute began to twist and spiral uncontrollably. She was falling fast, spinning at a dizzying speed with no way to stabilize herself. The lines of the parachute had twisted, creating what's known as a line twist, a dangerous situation in which the parachute becomes tangled and fails to open fully. Desperate to regain control, Makenzie tried kicking and twisting to untangle the chute, just as she'd been instructed. But her efforts were in vain, and the spinning only grew more violent. Makenzie's father, watching from the ground, could do nothing but look on in horror as his daughter's descent turned into a free fall. The terrifying reality of the malfunction became clearer with each passing second. His daughter was plummeting toward the earth at a speed no human body was meant to endure. Unable to reach her or help, Joe was left with nothing but dread as he watched her spiral down, helplessly waiting for the impact. For Makenzie, the descent felt endless. She was disoriented by the spinning, her mind racing as she struggled to remember her training. Her panic grew as she realized she was powerless to stop her descent. She later described the sheer terror, remembering how she kicked frantically in the air, trying to break free from the relentless spiral. With every second, her altitude dropped. Experts would later say that the malfunction and the twisting of her parachute may have slowed her descent slightly, but she was still hurtling toward the ground at an estimated 40 to 50 miles per hour, similar to the force of being hit by a car. It was enough to cause catastrophic injuries, but miraculously, she landed feet first, which helped disperse the impact through her lower body instead of her head or spine, which would have likely been fatal. The ground below was soft and sandy, a small stroke of luck in a horrifying situation. The impact was still severe, and Makenzie suffered massive injuries including fractures to her spine, pelvis, shoulder blade and ribs, along with internal damage to her liver and kidney. She later recalled the sensation of blacking out before hitting the ground, and when she awoke, she could barely breathe, her body racked with pain. But she was alive, As soon as Makenzie hit the ground, emergency services were called and she was rushed to the trauma center at Oklahoma City's OU Medical Center. Doctors who examined her injuries were shocked. Despite the impact of falling over 3,000 feet, she had somehow survived. Trauma surgeon Dr. Jeffrey Bender, who led her care, admitted, "I have no idea how she survived." The injuries she sustained were severe. Makenzie suffered fractures in her pelvis, lumbar spine, shoulder blade, and several ribs, along with a lacerated liver, kidney damage, and bleeding in her brain. Yet, in what her doctors would describe as nothing short of miraculous, none of these injuries required surgery. Even with broken bones and internal trauma, Makenzie's body had somehow absorbed the impact in a way that kept her alive. After several days in intensive care, she began her journey of recovery. She was transferred to the Baylor Institute for Rehabilitation in Dallas, where she began the long process of healing. But the physical injuries were only part of her ordeal. The psychological toll was equally challenging. Makenzie struggled with post-traumatic stress disorder along with memory loss, panic attacks, and recurring nightmares from the fall. Each day presented a new challenge, but her spirit remained resilient. Her family, especially her father, Joe, stood by her side. He recalled the look in her eyes immediately after the accident, the pain, fear, and determination she displayed even in those first moments after impact. To see her alive, despite everything, filled him with immense gratitude, even as he wished he had never agreed to jump in the first place. As Makenzie worked through her recovery, questions began to arise about what had gone wrong. Her family filed a lawsuit against Pegasus Air Sports, the company that had facilitated the jump, alleging negligence. The lawsuit argued that Makenzie had not been properly trained for a solo jump and that her parachute had been inappropriate for her skill level. Furthermore, the chute she'd been given was reportedly outdated and poorly maintained. Pegasus Air Sports defended its practices, with owner Robert Swainson stating that Makenzie had failed to take the corrective action they had covered in training. He claimed her parachute had deployed correctly and insisted that the issue stemmed from her panic rather than any fault of the equipment. However, the Federal Aviation Administration's investigation found no equipment defects, but raised concerns over the appropriateness of allowing a minor to skydive solo, especially one with limited experience. Ultimately, the court sided with Makenzie's family, awarding her $760,000 in damages for physical and mental suffering. Following the accident, the U.S. Parachute Association raised the minimum age for solo jumps to 18, a direct result of Makenzie's ordeal. Makenzie Wethington's survival is a story of resilience, strength, and a renewed sense of purpose. Looking back on the accident, she describes it as a life-altering event that forced her to confront not only her physical injuries, but also her fears and new limitations. She credits her survival to more than just luck, often expressing deep gratitude for the medical team who saved her and for what she calls her second chance. While recovering, Makenzie realized her experience could guide her to help others in their darkest moments. Her time spent in trauma recovery inspired her to pursue a career in medicine. She now studies pre-med at Sam Houston State University with the goal of becoming a trauma surgeon herself. "I know I want to specialize in trauma so I can relate to my patients," she shared, hoping that her journey can make her a source of comfort and understanding for those facing similar battles. The accident left her with scars, both visible and unseen. She continues to experience recurring kidney infections, panic attacks, and symptoms of PTSD, which have added new challenges to her daily life. Despite these obstacles, she embraces her new reality with fierce determination, channeling her energy into her studies and her vision for the future. For Makenzie, the accident underscored the importance of resilience, and she's committed to turning that resilience into a career that serves others. Makenzie's story reminds us that life's greatest challenges can lead to unexpected strengths. Her survival defies logic and speaks to the fragility and resilience of the human spirit. While the accident will forever mark her life, she refuses to let it define her. Instead, she continues forward, embracing each day as a gift and inspiring those around her to face their fears, take risks, and make the most of each moment.